Cabin weekends provide opportunities for hooking up. For about 5 or 6 years after we graduated high school, a large group of friends would make the 4-hour drive up to Kelsey's cabin for a long weekend. The core dozen of the friend group was always the same, but there would always be a couple changes each year. Someone had prior plans, couples would break up, college friends would join. To be honest, despite considering myself friendly with Kelsey, I was more or less included in the weekend due to a couple of my best mates dating her best friends. Every year, that weekend tended to be the highlight of our summers. Kelsey's cabin was the perfect setup for a bunch of kids in their early 20s to cut loose for a weekend of reckless binge drinking. The cabin was located deep in the Northwoods on a small lake, equipped with a pontoon, canoe, and a large wooden platform raft with massive buoys keeping it afloat. The cabin itself was a small log cabin packed full with futons, couches, and beds and had a detached garage which had been transformed into a bar with bunk beds and a back room. Every night, our crowd would walk a mile down back roads to a local pub that had live music on weekends. It's very possible our weekends up there gave that bar more business than the rest of the month combined. The first couple years up there we organized beer Olympics, but that was retired before long due to too many teams having members fall asleep by mid-afternoon and an emergency room trip due to a slip on the dock. After we graduated college, most of the group tended to make the weekend less of a weekend they wouldn't remember and more of a weekend to look back on with the fondest of memories. I guess you could call that growing up. A couple friends would lounge on the water drinking margaritas, a couple friends would turn the first day into a psilocybin experience, a couple people would play cards while hitting cigs, joints, and or jewels. As it would turn out, the less organized it was, the more memorable the weekend would turn out to be. The summer in which this story takes place is one of the lesser organized weekends. After introductions were made between a couple of the newcomers, I turned to one of Kelsey's best friends, Lauren, and asked her where Dave was. Lauren and Dave had gotten engaged immediately after college and were going on month 14 of their engagement, yet as far as I knew, no save the dates had been sent out. Oh, he's got a family reunion this weekend and couldn't make it. I noticed by the tone in her voice she didn't seem brokenhearted about the weekend away from her fiancé. Everyone knew that Dave was overbearing to the point where it was near controlling. He styled himself the dad of the group, which can be nice to have around, but is mostly annoying when he tells you that the next tequila shot is probably unnecessary. I know it's unnecessary Dave, but I don't have to be at work for another 60 hours, so how about you take it easy? That was about the extent of my interactions with Dave, but from what the girls had to say about him in whispers, it was safe to assume everyone was glad he wouldn't be around. Thursday night was a fairly slow night with everyone catching up, shooting dice, passing around a couple drinks, etc. The weather was supposed to be the best weekend of the summer, no chance of rain and highs in the upper 80s, so people wanted to take it slow. The group gradually thinned as people grew tired and finally the last individuals called it a night. Because we arrived later than most, I ended up on a top bunk in the bunkhouse, which is actually where I usually slept anyway due to typically being single at Kelsey's. I walked into the main cabin early Friday morning to begin breakfast. Trying to be as quiet as possible to not wake up the dozen people in the living room, I tossed in my headphones as I brewed 2 pots of coffee and began to chop up some potatoes for a breakfast. Escalate. As I worked, I felt a slight tap on my shoulder. I turned and came face to face in the narrow kitchen with Lauren. Her long, blonde hair was up in a ponytail and she was just wearing an oversized t-shirt that went to her upper thigh. I whispered to her, "Hey, morning Lauren. How'd you sleep?" "Great actually, Kelsey likes being a big spoon so I slept like a rock." "Smells good here. Want some coffee? How do you take it?" "Little bit of cream would be great." I handed her a steaming mug and got back to breakfast as she just stared at me. I gave her a little smile as I threw the potatoes in the pan, but she never moved. "Can I get you anything else?" "Nah, I'm good. Just watching you work," she said as she sipped her coffee. I looked at her again and we held eye contact for a couple seconds before she looked over my shoulder. People were starting to stir and get out of bed, awoken by the aromas filling the air. A friend asked Lauren to bring her a cup of coffee, so I handed her another mug and sent her on her way. She squeezed past me, her SS brushing slightly against the front of me. She looked back at me over her shoulder and smiled softly before moving into the living room. As I finished making breakfast, a couple of the girls were getting ready to put on their swimsuits and hit the sun early. Lauren came back through the kitchen and squeezed past me again, this time facing me with more than incidental contact. I took my plate outside and sat with some friends who had progressed to mimosas. I was about halfway through my third mimosa when the cabin door opened and I spilled down the front of my shirt. Lauren came out in a bright yellow bikini, her blonde hair flowing and coming to a stop midway down her back. She had a Bloody Mary in one hand and a book in the other. She waved at us and took off for the dock. I'd be thankful for sunglasses and the discreetness they provide, but they don't hide the obviousness of every male head. Turning to watch her go. Lauren was a natural athlete and her body showed it. She was taller than most of her friends at around 5 feet 9 inches, her arms and stomach were toned well, and her SS was glorious. With each step, her SS cheeks would jiggle slightly and it was an incredible sight to watch her long legs carry her away.